Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me again in my daily devotion. As we know, this is Good Friday, a time where probably the most important day in the history of the world, mainly because it is the day where Jesus gave up his life for us. Friends, I would just like to make a backgrounder of what I'm going to share in the next few minutes. Now, if you look at the Christians right now, no, have you ever wondered how many there are in the whole world? I checked the internet and found out that there are 2.38 billion Christians in the whole world. Um, of course, there are different sects, different denominations, but there's about 2.38 billion, or about 31% of the whole world believe in Jesus Christ. Wow. Just thinking about it, a third of the world believe in Jesus. And they're probably celebrating the Holy Week together with us. No? And then there's an even more interesting number that if you mix together, you combine the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews, these Abrahamic religions, no? Those who trace their lineage all the way to Abraham, they reach up to almost 4.2 or 4.3 billion. That's more than 50% of the whole world. Friends, if you think about it, prior to these monotheistic religions, before Christianity was established, there was this prevalence of many, many gods. We know that the Romans had a lot of gods, the Greeks had a lot of gods. Only this very small group of people called Jews and the Israelites believed in that one God. And they always followed the lineage towards their father, the great father Abraham, who believed that there is only one God. And from there, you can see how the world has been truly influenced. No, that monotheistic belief that there is now truly one God, and He's not even made of flesh and bone; that He is just spirit. I can just just bear in mind how many people right now in the whole world are celebrating the Holy Week. Some of them celebrate it differently. Like there are a lot of people who, they go and they do in the Philippines, it's very, very common where people go out on the streets and then they flagellate themselves, and they go through the motions of the death and suffering of Jesus. Other people just quietly just celebrate and reflect. But whatever way you commemorate this important day, it is important that you know also the biblical basis towards it. Now, let's talk about the biblical basis. We know that Jesus spent his last night together with his disciples on that upper room where they had their last supper. And it was also the time when Jesus said that he will be betrayed by one of them. And then after their dinner, he went away in a place called Gethsemane in the Garden of the Mount of Olives. And Jesus had a inner turmoil in his mind because he knew what he was going through. On the next couple of hours, it was going to be the most difficult time of suffering that any man would ever experience. And so Jesus had his moment. He had his moment of weakness when he said, Lord, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. And yet, he had that resolve, not my will, but yours be done. Friends, do you see the timing here? The timing of Jesus' suffering and also the time of the Jewish tradition of the Passover. Remember, they had their Passover meal. Now, the Passover is a tradition by the Jews where they celebrate and commemorate the time when Moses, during his confrontation with Pharaoh, and Moses asking Pharaoh to set free the Jewish people. And Pharaoh was so hard-hearted and said, I will never free the people. And then finally, on that final 10th plague, where God said, I will take away the firstborn of Egypt. And then the command was for all the Jews and all the God's chosen people to put a blood sign. They would have to sacrifice the blood of a lamb for them and put it on the posts and the doors of their houses. So when the angel of death would come, it would pass them by. And there was great wailing and suffering and great sorrow in the time of Egypt because a lot of people died. The firstborn of Egypt died. And the people of Israel, whose blood was posted on their doorposts, were spared. This was the Passover tradition. And if you notice that significant time where Jesus himself was tried by the Sanhedrin, by the religious leaders, and ultimately sentenced to die by Rome and under Pontius Pilate, Jesus had to suffer the way he suffered because he fulfilled the prophecy that he was the ultimate sacrifice once and for all, that there is no more need for sacrifice because the Son of God, the blood of Christ, will be the one to be the sacrifice for us all. That is the message of what Christianity is all about. That it is Jesus' act, this ultimate act of sacrifice that Jesus did on the cross. John chapter 10, verse 17 says, Therefore the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. The command I received from my Father. Friends, honestly, this is probably the most difficult video I can ever make, because when I started to write and prepare this, I was just deeply moved thinking about the suffering of Jesus. And friends, I don't want to talk about it. I just like to share with you a video after this. And I hope tomorrow, let's talk again about the significance of the way of suffering that Jesus had to go through. He was flogged, he was beaten, he was mocked. A crown of thorns was put on his head. And he was almost killed just with the whips alone, the flogging alone. And then he had to walk through the streets of Jerusalem. You know, there's a place in Jerusalem where they call it the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering. They say that it's only less than a kilometer. But can you picture the state Jesus was in? Can you picture that the state where he was exhausted from all the beatings and the blood loss, from the whips? And Jesus had to carry the cross on his back, and with all the people mocking him and all the glimpses, he could probably have a flashback. These people are the very people who used to wave their branches at me on Sunday. Remember that Palm Sunday where people said, Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David? Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And yet these are the same people who now mock him, who spit in his face, who ridiculed him, and watched him die on the cross. That is man for you, friends. Gullible, weak, easily swayed, and sinful, wretched. And that's what we are. That's why Jesus had to suffer. Jesus had to pay the price for our sin. And we know that when Jesus walked that road, you know that walking itself, it's not a downhill walk, mind you. It's an uphill walk. It says Jesus was crucified in the place of the skull. From there, it's like an uphill walk. Can you imagine? You are beaten, you are bruised, you are bloodied, You are carrying the cross up the hill onto your very death, and death by resurrection. I cannot continue anymore, friends. I'll just show you the video, and I'll see you again tomorrow, okay? Bye-bye.